there's nothing bigger.
Sweetheart, fingers crossed, because, like, that's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Access denied. Access denied. Access denied.
Hey, y'all, it's your host, Jessica Jordan, and I'm here on Access Denied, the podcast dedicated to helping you get over your fear of rejection, one episode at a time. Let's go! Hey, y'all, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Access Denied. I am so freaking excited to introduce you to today's guest. Please welcome to the pod, Caitlin Blunnie, who is better known as Liberal Jane. I love this episode because we talk about two of my favorite things, art and activism, and how art is activism. We also get into the nitty-gritty details of what divorce looks like, the finances of it, and what it means to date after divorce. It's a can't-miss episode, friends. Stay tuned and enjoy. Caitlin, welcome to Access Denied. How are you doing today?
I am so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I have loved your work since I started, since I came across your page and followed you and all of that, and I am just so honored to have you on the pod.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you.
Yay! Okay, well, for people that don't know who you are, who are listening right now, can you go ahead and do a little introduction of your work, what you do, all the fun stuff?
My name is Caitlin Blunnie. I go by the handle Liberal Jane online, and I am an artist and activist from the DC area. Right now I'm up in Baltimore, but DC is very close to my heart. I, for about the last 10 years, have been working in nonprofit and organizing, and a few years ago became an artist full-time. I work mostly with nonprofits, some corporate clients, but the goal of my page is to use the framework of bodily autonomy to connect issues from abortion rights to queer liberation, and really make that messaging accessible to anybody, regardless of their education or background.
Everything you just said is so close and near and dear to my heart. I love it so much. Congratulations on being a full-time artist. I think that is just so impressive every time I hear that from somebody, and I know the work that goes into that, so congratulations, that's huge. I've been so impressed by what you've done and built, and all of your pieces are so beautiful. They're so pouring out with positivity, but also the messaging is so strong. It's just great. You're great. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot to me. I grew up pretty conservative, and neither of my parents at the time had a college education, and so I think when I went to college, my mind was opened up in so many ways, and my political beliefs changed pretty quickly, and that experience really informs a lot of what I do. Instead of, coming at it from a place of elitism, which I think a lot of messaging comes from, I try to keep in mind that, art specifically has a way of getting people to stop and think. And if I can play a role in shifting someone's belief or even introducing a new idea, that is just so powerful.
I am so glad you said that, because I too grew up in a very conservative town, and while I didn't necessarily pay attention to politics back then, it was something that was kind of just ingrained into the culture of where I was, so naturally some of those beliefs stuck. And I always say with my advocacy in the disability space, it's hard to not come at it from a place of elitism, because you feel like an expert in the field, but you also feel how are you not getting this? It's just basic empathy, it's basic understanding, it's basic care, and trying to come at it at a way of being okay, this might be new to people, genuinely new. How do we address that without anger, without frustration, and talk to them, that gentle parenting kind of mindset? And I feel your art really, in the way that it, the coloring and everything, it represents that so beautifully.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
Of course. I'm really curious. I always ask people this when they have names that are different from their actual name, but Liberal Jane, where did that come from?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. So like I mentioned, I went to college and became radicalized, as the right would say. And growing up, my dad I'm from New York, and so if anyone's familiar with New Yorkers, specifically Long Islanders, there's like a very specific way people talk. Um, and I grew up hearing things like Joe Schmo or Debbie Downer, like, you know, those types of phrases. And so when I went to college, I had always been, I guess, very political. Like, I had a very justice mindset. So when my political beliefs changed, me and my dad would debate a lot. And that was the name he called me to be dismissive. He'll be like, okay, liberal Jane, and that would end the conversation. And so part of the reason why I reclaimed that name was just to, it's such a powerful image I feel like liberal Jane evokes, and there's so much in that is important to me. And then there's also connections to things like the Jane Collective, which helped provide abortion care before Roe legalized abortion in the US. And since then the name is like stuck. The thing is, I get a lot of slack for it online now because, of course, the word liberal has a different connotation than it did 7-8 years ago when I started the account. A lot of folks will be like, why aren't you leftist Jane or commie Jane? And I think at this point, the term liberal, I think for a lot of people, sort of represents the center left, or like sort of where the Democratic Party is in the US. And so it attracts people who aren't necessarily as left as perhaps I identify, but that's part of bringing them into the atmosphere and making sure that, you know, we can actually engage with those people and push them further left.
I was going to say, in some ways, I almost feel like that is your target audience. Like, that is the goal, right? If you're trying to, like, radicalize, if we're going to use that word, right? others and, like, get them to understand and educate and advocate and all of those things. Like, you don't want an echo chamber, because I know that's something that I talk to my disabled friends about all the time. We often feel like we're in an echo chamber saying the same things, and we're all supportive of one another because we all get it. But the other people that don't get it just aren't getting access to it because we're like being suppressed, and our voices aren't getting like pushed in the algorithm in the same way that non-disabled voices get. And anyway, that's its own rant, its own thing. But I totally understand, like, that would bring it in. And I love that you reclaimed that name when it was like something that was used to dismiss you and kind of like, I don't want to say put you in your place, but kind of just like shut you up in a way. Like, love that, because now you're using it to be loud and proud, and I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And I love what you said about having it be an echo chamber. I think so much of my organizing work, because I come from abortion rights as like my background, that there is a large generational gap where you have the activists from the 60s and 70s, many of whom are still involved in the movement, who grew up with a different set of language, who grew up talking about, you know, abortion as a last resort, or talking about abortion exclusively as a women's issue. And it's not that there's malice there, it's unfortunately intergenerational gaps. And it's on us to, you know, build those bridges instead of shut those people out.
100%. And, you know, with everything going on in the US right now, and kind of globally in many ways too, it can feel very combative, I feel like. And I do think that there is obvious reason for that, and I don't necessarily think it's all for the worse. I think that we should be fighting, and there should be pushback to some of the stuff going on right now, because a lot of it is so intolerable and so outlandishly awful. But at the same time, there are those people that truly aren't evil, right? And being able to welcome them and not shun them and not make them feel like the worst thing on earth, like they are the devil themselves, like, that is important work too. And it's hard to see past that when there's so much going on. And I don't blame anybody for being angry and all of that, but I do think there is beauty in trying to bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah, you know, an experience I had a couple years ago that really, I think, was a big learning experience for me. I was a board member for an abortion fund in Virginia, and the fund board at the time was comprised entirely of white women who were over 60, all of whom were able-bodied. And when I had joined the fund, I had done so because I wasn't able to get an abortion in Virginia, and I felt like, you know, I knew everything there was to know about abortion, and if it was that hard for me to access care, I couldn't imagine what other people were going through. And unfortunately, this was back in 2020, and I would watch week after week. We would have board meetings, and racial justice was always the last thing on the agenda, and always the thing, of course, we didn't get to. And eventually, it came to a head, and when we did finally talk about it, the way in which people of color, poor people specifically, were spoken about, it caused huge rifts. At that point, there were some younger board members, and there was this divide between the people who had been there originally, who started the fund, and then those who were trying to modernize, trying to bring the fund up to date. Unfortunately, what happened in that situation was many people resigned from the fund in frustration, feeling like, they couldn't catch on. And that's not to say that work isn't important. It is very difficult. It doesn't always work, but that doesn't mean it's not worth trying. And that specific abortion fund at this point converted from a volunteer model to paid staff, which now we're better able to serve callers and reflect them. So change doesn't always happen easily. There's sometimes some growing pains, but it doesn't mean it's not worth doing.
I think that's a really important message. Change does almost always involve growing pains. Change isn't comfortable, and I don't think it should be, because that's the point in many ways.
Yeah, I heard recently, the idea of getting out of your comfort zone. Instead of thinking of it as outside your comfort zone, thinking of it as like a learning zone. And then that allows us to be able to make some mistakes. It allows us to be able to reflect instead of, okay, we're going to change course and everything's going to be okay. When you end cycles, it does induce anxiety. It induces negative feelings, but that doesn't mean it's not worth doing.
I call these nuggets of wisdom on the podcast. That is such a strong nugget of wisdom, because I think a lot of times people are so afraid of stepping out of their comfort zone, right? Or engaging in something that brings change, even if it's a change they want, even if it's a positive change in their life, not just like society at large, but in their own personal lives, because of it being uncomfortable, but it's still worth it. It's still something worth like pursuing. And I think that is, thank you for sharing that. I really love that perspective.
Of course, this past year has been probably the biggest change of my life. I went from a 12-year long-term marriage to living by myself in a new place, and dealing with a lot of setbacks, dealing with a lot of loneliness and confusion, and I felt like last year when my life sort of fell to pieces, I felt myself trying so hard to hold on to those broken pieces, and there was so much pain and suffering as a result of that I think at this point I'm such an advocate for fully crashing out, like murder your life, like start over. It's okay. We're allowed to have so many lives in this one life that we have.
Oh, I love that. I also it's part of that learning zone, right? Like you're allowed to make mistakes, giving yourself permission to make mistakes, to get it wrong, to fall apart. I always say anytime something bad happens in my life, I'm like, I need a day to stare at the wall. Just give me, sometimes it's more than a day, let's be real. But give me a day to just do nothing, break down, have my moment, and then I'll feel better and we can move on. But being able to crash out, being able to feel those things is so vital. And it's not a weakness. It's not something that you should shy away from. And I know that this is a big part of your story, the ending of your marriage and whatnot. It's something we can relate on. I know you were married a lot longer than me. Yeah. Do you want to talk more about kind of the feelings that were evolved throughout that? I don't know if it's a rejection. I don't know your story specifically, but in a way it is, no matter what side of the coin you are in a divorce, a breakup, whatever. So yeah. Do you want to talk more about that kind of how you got through that rejection, I guess?
Yeah, I think if I back up a little bit, it'll make a little bit more sense. So back in 2020, I don't know if we remember this time period, there was a lot happening in the world. Of course, the pandemic, Black Lives Matter protests across the country, and my relationship with my dad, as I mentioned, he's very conservative. I am not. And that relationship was becoming more and more tense. And in June 2020, I believe I had hit 50,000 followers. And my brother, being the darling he is, was like, wow, Caitlin did this. And my dad, because he's a narcissist, couldn't believe it. And so one night he searched the internet for me, went through everything I had posted online, and had found a Tumblr ask of someone asking, are you queer or are you just an ally? Because I'd never made my position clear. And I said, I identify as queer, but I can't come out because it's not safe for me to do so with my family. My dad ignored my calls for multiple days. Father's Day passed. The next day he called me and he said, I need to show you something and I want you to tell me what you think. And he sent me the screenshot of the ask and started screaming at me for being a liar. How could I have lied? Called my relationship a cover-up, like a beard relationship. And it was probably one of the worst moments of my life. Just getting screamed at for being bisexual, which it seems so funny now, but it was so dramatic at the time. And it led to me having a huge falling out with my dad. I have not spoken to him since. And also with my mom and siblings who didn't understand why I couldn't just play nice and continue to keep up the facade. And so I think in 2020, that was like the first bit of feeling like this mask that I had created for myself to sort of navigate the world. That was a big chunk of it gone. In the years that followed that, I was an abortion rights advocate. I was an organizer. I was doing trainings across the country with sex workers, with folks struggling with substance abuse about self-managed abortion in case in-clinic abortion access became limited, which of course now we know it did. And there was just this buildup of was living outside of DC, the Trump administration was happening, the pandemic was happening, and there was just a lot going on. And it just led to a tremendous amount of burnout. And so after Roe was overturned, I'll be honest, I just completely broke. I think after doing that form of advocacy for so long and really like pounding on the drum saying the end is coming, Roe is going to be overturned, and years of people saying that I was being ridiculous or that would never happen, it then happened, and then it was just nothing. You know, I think so many of us in the abortion rights movement thought that there would be like this mass response, that there would be like protests, and there was, but you know, in the 3 years now that we've lost access, it's just getting worse and worse. So I left my job, which was a huge part of my life, and I think the advocacy space, I think because I had so much personal trauma related to the work I was doing, it was just becoming a really unsafe place for me. And so slowly just like these big parts of my life just start getting chipped away. And all that I'm really left with at this point is the business, my relationship. My ex left his job and was working on the business with me. And we just had this very distraught relationship where he didn't work and I worked, and I was taking on so much responsibility because I wanted him to be able to figure out his dreams. And it kills me when I see on social media people dreaming of like being a stay-at-home girlfriend or wife or whatever, because what are we sacrificing ourselves for? Like, what are these men doing that is so important that we are taking on the bulk of housework, the bulk of, emotional labor? And so the other big thing that happened in this 5-year period was I was eventually approached by my therapist, who was like, hey, I think that you're on the autism spectrum, and went through a lot of assessments and a lot of stuff started to make sense. And I realized a lot of the challenges I was having with my ex boiled down to being in a relationship with a neurotypical person, and it just not some of the things I did and the ways that I acted didn't make sense to him. And that's something that I've had to do a lot of work in this past year to like reclaim, to allow myself to stim, like allow myself to be this big personality. And so the last 2, 3 years of the relationship, I was really suffering. Lots of crying in the car, lots of having panic attacks at the grocery store. I couldn't get through a single day without having multiple anxiety or panic attacks. It was really dire. And so eventually I realized I needed to leave. I tried multiple times to break up, and that just wasn't going anywhere. I think in retrospect, I was asking to break up as a question when a breakup is a statement. Like, I was trying to get him to agree to that, and it just never, it wasn't going to happen. So I did probably one of the worst things I've ever done in my life, which was I picked up and left. He was away for a funeral, and I packed all my things and disappeared. I lived up in Baltimore for a couple months with friends, and then tried to move to Richmond, which I lived there for 3 weeks, which is a whole nother story, before moving back up here, where I've been for the last year or so. And now I'm getting ready to move back to DC, which really feels like a full circle moment. There's a quote that's like, sometimes you have to take the long way back to get to where you belong. And I've learned a lot about myself over this last year. Lots of grief, but I think at this point I have been through so much that endings are just new beginnings. They don't scare me the way they used to.
There was so much in there. I first want to say, like, thank you for your vulnerability and for being so open with me and the listeners and everybody today, because I think there's a lot of really important nuggets of wisdom and just like general like important messages in there about staying true to yourself and like not like, I think that's the biggest thing that I'm really proud of you of, is for you finding that in all of this. And I hope that you feel like you've found yourself and that you are free to be yourself now.
Yeah, I think the through line in all my relationships was just so much self-abandonment, that I put everyone before me, and that's probably, oldest daughter syndrome of like, I need to take care of everyone. But I was 29 and I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what my hobbies are. Like, my only hobby is drawing, and now that's my career, and I am miserable. And I think in particular for anyone who's struggling in a relationship, I was so caught up on the fact that I up and left and abandoned my ex, and I felt so bad about that. And it's taken me a lot of time to realize that before I left, I had already been abandoned in so many ways by him. He was physically there, but not emotionally, not the way that I needed him. I think we get caught up in this sunk cost fallacy of like, oh, I've been with this person for so long, I'm gonna make it work, or it's not so bad. Like, perhaps you're crying from time to time. Perhaps you feel like your partner doesn't see you. All of that adds up, and it's not easy getting out, but it is worth it.
When I feel like going through the thick of the downfall of my marriage, I had people telling me, oh, the first 5 years are just like really hard. Like, relationships are give and take. It's gonna be hard. Relationships are hard work. The thing is, the right relationship shouldn't be that hard of work. I'm not saying it doesn't take compromise. I'm not saying it doesn't take conversation and communication. And is being together a choice at the end of the day? Yes. Like, there is work involved, but you should want to do that work. It shouldn't be ripping you apart internally, externally. It shouldn't be adding so much stress to your day after day after day. That's unhealthy. That's not good for either party involved. Because at the end of the day, you're not, like, if you are torn apart, then you're not like your authentic self for your partner, and both of you are holding each other back at that point in some capacity. So I think that is really important. I also really want to highlight what you said about breakup should be a statement, not a question. because that is something I've not said this on the pod before. I've not said this anywhere publicly before, but for about a year leading up to our actual separation, I would ask my ex pretty much once a month when we were having a fight, so do you want a divorce? I would ask that. Do you, like, this is not work, like, this is clearly not working. Do you want a divorce? And constantly it was a no, let's work through it. No, let's work through it. And like, eventually it was a hell yeah, I do. And I was like, okay. But I think if I had stood in my power, and I like, that's one of, I don't know if it's a regret, but it's just something that I'm aware that I didn't do. You know, it's led me to where I am, so I can't say I regret it. But I do think that, like, I wish in some capacity I had been strong enough to just be like, I want a divorce. Because I did. And I never said it.
Yeah, the D word. That's what we called it in our house. I didn't even say the D word. I said the D word in January 2023, and I left in June 2024. And I don't think I said the D word in between those 2 dates. It's only recently that the D word has come up.
I apologize for saying it so many times.
It's not a D word to me. I think when I left, my ex was so afraid I was gonna leave. And I think in retrospect, he felt that he wasn't pulling his weight in the relationship, and that's where that deep fear came from. And so when I left, and if anybody is listening that is thinking about leaving, or even if you're not, the most important thing you can do, some people call it a fuck you fund. Have some money put away in savings for yourself, not money that's shared, because an added layer to this. In 2021, I believe it was, my dad, who, again, I mentioned I don't get along with, got caught up in a lawsuit. Essentially, what happened as a result of it was my mom and siblings' bank accounts were frozen. And there was fear that the same thing would happen to me. And so I transferred all of my assets to my ex-husband. And when I left, I felt so guilty that I was leaving. I left, there was $75,000. I left $70,000, which is money I have never seen again. Apparently it's gone at this point. But I felt so bad about leaving that all of the money that I made through Liberal Jane, all of my savings are gone. And that's been, I think, a lot of grief this year of, like, you know, I guess hoping that my ex would give me the half or something, because it was the money I made through art. And that's, I think, one of my biggest regrets from leaving. I think I was so disempowered that I just at that point was like, I need to get out of here. I don't care about the money. I don't care. Like, I need to physically remove myself. But if anyone is ever leaving, seriously, having a separate fund, just having seed money can go a long way. Because even though, you know, I think a lot of people look at my online following and they're like, oh, she's fine. She's freelance. This past year, I mean, just living, I'm $9,000 in debt. Each month is month to month, and I'm actually planning on closing the business side of Liberal Jane in a few months to return to full-time work. And, you know, I'm not too upset about it. Life changes, things change, and it's okay for your dreams to change too. But the financial side of breakups, I think, is something we don't talk about enough.
Oh, you've opened a can of worms now. I think we have to, like, talk about this a little bit because, first of all, $70K is huge. That's not just, like, a little bit of money. That's a lot of money. Like, that's some people's, like, life savings, like, for their entire life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's how much I was working. Just constant. It breaks my heart that money is gone. It is probably the worst financial setback of my life. I hope there's nothing bigger.
Sweetheart, fingers crossed, because, like, that's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Not to laugh, like, we have to laugh, but, like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, that is a loss. That's, in so many ways, a bigger loss than the relationship, I think. because it's the loss of freedom, it's the loss of safety, comfort,
Yeah,
all of these
yeah,
things.
absolutely. I mean, when I lost my car in October, that was it. I my feet always hurt from walking everywhere. I just want to say that. Um, yeah, I mean, health setbacks, not having a car. There have been so many times in the past year that I was just like, I wish there was just some place I could go to crash out. Like, I wish there was some place I could go where I don't have to pay rent. I don't have to, figure out how am I gonna meet that number at the end of the month. And of course now it's even harder with the tariffs and everything increasing price wise.
I think something you said about having like a fuck you fund is so important. I have a friend who told me, she's like, jewelry. Jewelry is a safe thing. Like, if you don't feel like you can actually like safely put your money somewhere, like collect jewelry and sell that. Like, it will give you, it might not be the most, but it's something. So I thought that was a really good tip. I'm a big believer in prenups. If you're in a
Yeah.
relationship and you're like leaning towards marriage and all of that, like having not had a prenup and going through like such a nasty divorce, like I so bad. I can't stress how much like a prenup is so essential, I feel like, for me in if I ever take that step again. Just because why not sort things out when you still care about each other, when you still like each other, when emotions are not raw and beaten to the ground, like figure it out in advance. It doesn't mean that you want a divorce. It doesn't mean that you are going into a marriage expecting it to end. It truly just means that you are, to be honest, I think it means that you care about each other. I think it's an ultimate definition of the care that you have for each other. And you're like, you know what? If this doesn't work out for any freaking reason, you're cared for and I'm cared for.
Yeah. I think about all the time if I didn't have my financial rights stripped by my parents, we probably wouldn't have been married because we got married in 2021 as a reaction to my parents' lawsuit and their financial troubles. And that's like a very complicated situation. But I mean, yeah, just be really careful with who you're with, and prenups are so important because people change, and that's okay. I would have loved for me and my ex to be together forever. I wanted to have kids, I wanted to have the house, and those visions just after a while didn't align, and I kept trying to force it, and that wasn't true to who I was either.
And I think like so much of what you said at the beginning too, like change is uncomfortable. Like this is part of that discomfort, right? Is being able to let things go that no longer fit the person you are now, and better yet, the person you are trying and wanting and dreaming of being.
Yes, I love that. You put that so well.
I have so many more questions actually.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like divorce and what we're talking about, I feel like there's so much intertwined with the feminist movement in many ways. So do you think like your separation, divorce, and all of that has impacted your work, your art?
That is such a great question. Yes. I think this thing that has been bothering me for months and months is something that's come up over and over for me, which is when I graduated from college, I had a therapist tell me, I am worried for your safety, physical safety, if you move back home. And at the time, I didn't know where to go. I ended up moving from New York to Virginia with my ex, probably sooner than should have happened because I had nowhere else to go. And I keep thinking about how many people have been raised by narcissists or in relationships with narcissists or people with other manipulative personality traits. And how do you leave that? And the reality is most people don't get to leave. I think one of the most heartbreaking things that happened after I left my ex, I told my mom, and I was very anxious about it. I come from a conservative Catholic background. Divorce isn't really a thing. Nobody in my family has ever been divorced. I'm the first. I was really scared of how they were going to react. If I saw how, like, my ex's mom reacted, for example, she was like, did you do couples counseling? Did you try? Are you willing to put the effort in? And it was so frustrating because at that point, yeah, we had done couples counseling 3 or 4 times. I had been trying so hard in a failing relationship for years. But my mom's response was, you were strong enough to do what I never was able to. It's heartbreaking to hear that, but I think in a way it was very healing in that as a kid I just didn't understand why my mom stayed with him. And now as an adult, repeating the same cycles, unfortunately, and trying really hard to disrupt them, there's so much, like, forgiveness in that. Like, doing the move that I did with 2 cats, the emotions, the stress, the sob, like, I have a photo from the day I left, and I'm just, like, beet red. I just look like I've been through the ringer. And I was like, Mom, it was hard enough with cats. You had 3 kids. There's no question. And so, in terms of my work, something I've been thinking about a lot is just safe houses. Like, when I left my relationship, I was given, like, domestic violence resources. I was like, no, this doesn't apply to me. It's not that bad. Like, yeah, my ex was calling me names and making fun of me, but it rarely was physical. And so, I don't count. And just really thinking about, do the resources that exist out there, A, they're not enough, and B, are they even reaching the people who need them? And do people stuck in these relationships genuinely have options? And that question's been really haunting me over the last year.
I feel like I had a similar situation with the domestic violence. Like, I feel like that was the only thing that was resource that was available. And I was like, I don't fit that bill. Like, I wasn't getting beaten. I wasn't getting physically assaulted. Like, so I'm fine. But I still would have really benefited from some level of resource. And I think, like, it sounds like you would have too. And I'm sure, like, we are not the only ones. And that's not, like, obviously, domestic violence is a huge issue. And, like, women need that support. But, like, I wish there was more. I wish there was more to address the varying levels of abuse that happen in relationships, in the home, behind closed doors, because that's not really something that is talked about, I feel like, or provided for.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of it, especially in long-term relationships, you keep going back to the beginning, the honeymoon phase, when everything was good and felt good, and all the ways he was charming and smart and amazing, and oh yeah, he called me naive and arrogant, but he just said it offhandedly. And it's like, there are so many things that were said that haunt me still, and, when you are in a relationship where resentment is building, things aren't necessarily resolved, it does become a safety issue over time. I think right now we're at such an interesting political moment, because I think so many young women specifically are waking up to the fact that, like, being in, at least from my perspective, being in a heterosexual relationship, it's this double shift. You're still required to have a career and do everything, but then you're also still, I jokingly call it mommy girlfriend. Like, I take care of everything. I do the cleaning. I'm there to be supportive and comforting. And, where do we get our cups filled? Like, who's pouring into us?
Who is pouring into us? That's such, yes. Who? I'd love to know. No, that's like, actually, I love that, because I feel like we are seeing that discourse a lot online right now from women being like, what is the point of these heteronormative relationships in a way if we're being, like, expected to be emotional support? We're being expected to, and, like, I'm not saying that it's, you hear it online, like, it's not all men. It's not. Like, there are some gems out there, right? But, like, I do think, like, to a level, like, I don't know if it's biological, I don't know if it's the patriarchy, I don't know if it's a cute combination of the two in some ways. Men are less empathetic, and they don't understand the emotional needs of women to the level that, like, most women require. And that leaves so many women feeling unfulfilled, unsatisfied, but that's not the word I'm looking for. It's I don't want to say like used, but kind of like used in many ways. And obviously that creates tension over time. And again, like obviously you see happy relationships, you see happy marriages. Like I believe in love. I believe in all of that. Like truly, even going through it myself, like I believe in it. But I think finding that takes like both parties do have to work at it. And the men especially, they have to be willing to unlearn. They have to be willing to change, go through the discomfort of unlearning that patriarchal mindset that is fed to them from birth.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been really interesting dating women post-divorce because holy smokes, the emotional intelligence, like, it's unparalleled. And of course, like, I'm generalizing, not all men. But I feel like, you know, women socially are raised to be not necessarily be a provider, but a form of a provider. It's labor that goes unacknowledged, unpaid, but it's required to keep households afloat. And I think, yeah, more and more women are saying, no, I don't want to do this. And of course, I'm sure my algorithms are like on single girl videos specifically, but I feel like there is a shift happening.
I completely agree. I was actually curious about like your dating life post divorce, so thank you for sharing a little insight into that. I'm actually like I've not explored like my own sexuality that much, to be quite honest, but I have always like been curious, I guess, about what that would look like, because I'm not attracted to women, to say that. I'm not afraid of labels, I just don't feel like I need one, that sort of thing, you know what I mean? I've always been curious what the emotional capacity of that would be comparatively to dating men. And you know, like I'm currently dating a really great guy, you know, and he does pick up like emotional labor, and he does pick up like physical labor. He helps me clean. That's a win. Love that.
Yeah.
Which sounds like so bare minimum, right? Like I say it out loud and I'm like, yeah, he should be doing that. What like and if he's listening, thank you for doing that, but you should be doing
We'll give him a clap. He's the one good guy.
One good guy. But no, like it's amazing, like going from dating my ex and like all these other people that I have dated over the last couple of years or whatever, and like not getting that and not seeing that and not like, and just expecting so little of men too. When you actually get it, I don't know. I've panicked so many times in this like relationship. I'm like, I don't know if this is, I should be doing it because I'm so hyper independent now. I'm like, that's my job.
Yeah.
Why are you helping me clean? Put that vacuum down. What are you doing? And I don't know if that's like kind of been your experience in dating at all too. Like you're just like, whoa, this is weird. You're doing things so differently. How do I navigate that?
You know, the thing with me and dating, I don't know if I'm meant to be with somebody. Like, I think I have the capacity to love. I don't know if that's my trauma speaking, or what, but I don't know. Like I mentioned, I'm autistic, I have chronic illness, I have Hashimoto's disease, and so my every day's a little different. And instead of someone being there expecting things from me, or expecting chores to be done, or for me to be at a certain energy level, removing that has just been such a freeing feeling of like, you know what? I'm really tired right now. I'm not gonna unload the dishwasher. You know what? The house is a mess. That's okay. Like, I'll get to it when I get to it. And to not have somebody there expectedly or annoyed that they have to pick up the slack has been such a shift and has really helped my anxiety overall.
I absolutely love that for you, because I do think that there is like such a freedom in that in many ways, because as I mentioned, I dated a lot of people before I got into my current like relationship, and it was something I enjoyed. I enjoyed that period a lot. I didn't in some ways. I feel like I am built for companionship in many in many
No,
ways.
it's beautiful.
No, but like I feel like that speaks to the differences of human nature, right? Like we're all built differently. We all have different needs, and I feel like, and wants and desires, and like I want and feel like I benefit from companionship in many ways when it's beneficial, of course. But that's all to say, like, there was something really, really freeing about dating and not necessarily wanting to have a relationship come out of it, or almost like dating somebody and like having the companionship when you want it, but like knowing it's not long term, and knowing like this isn't going to be somebody that I eventually like walk down the aisle to again, you know, like this is just for right now. And in some ways, like, it's emotionally like draining, I guess, maybe, but like for me, like, I had a lot of people telling me not to be doing that. They're like, oh, that's just, you're just gonna get hurt in the end. And like, yeah, it kind of sucked, but like, I don't know, it also kind of worked. So I respect it. I think it's a powerful thing. I do. I think it's really
I'm
good.
glad that you're happy now. I mean, I feel like it can change. I left, like I said, in June 2024 because that relationship was so long. There's this thing where, like, for each year you were together, you should wait 1 month. And so that would put me at, like, 12, 14 months. And so September 2025 is what I keep joking is going to be, like, my debut to the world. I dipped my toe in the dating pool on off. I think I just struggle with, like, having my energy matched. And I'm dating seriously, but I don't want all these expectations put on me at the same time. And so I think that'll shift with time. I've never been single this long in my life, which is kind of nuts. And so it's really been a period of self-discovery for me.
Well, I want to say a huge congratulations for that, because I do think that being single is an important thing for people, men, women, non-binary, like across every gender, across every background. I think being single is so freeing to discover yourself. And so congratulations for getting out of a situation that was not serving you. Congratulations for taking this time to explore and not being not being so quick to jump into something again just to feel that comfort. Because I think that's what a lot of people do. They jump into situations before they've healed, before they've worked through their own stuff for comfort. And I think it's really empowering that you have you're taking this time. It took me, 2 years. Easy. 2 years. That's a long time.
That, is really reassuring to hear. And I think the more that people can come together and talk about their experiences, the less mystified it becomes. And, like, it's never too late to start over. And so much can come from new.
100%. I mean, you have people, like, in their 50s, 60s finding the love of their life. You know, like, it's never too late. And, like, to put these arbitrary, like, number expectations on us, all that does is cause anxiety and panic. For what? For what?
Yeah. And for what? We get one beautiful life. I need to go lay in some grass. That's what that means when I feel like that.
And to kind of wrap this up, because I see the time and I want to ask my 4 hard-hitting questions that I ask all my guests, but I just want to say this, like, we get one beautiful life, but we are able to live so many lives within that one life, and that is a beautiful thing in and of itself. So I love this. This was such a very wonderful conversation. Thank you so much again for sharing everything.
Of course. I think so much of my experiences in life have to do with stigma, and the more that we can talk about it, the less stigmatized it becomes.
Period. Yes. Well, I do want to be mindful of your time. I feel like I could talk to you all day. Like, truly, I feel like we have a lot of similarities in our stories, and so I would love to continue the chat, maybe off the pod, but in general, I do want to ask a few questions, starting with number 1. When you're feeling, like, down or upset, what is a song that you will turn on that will instantly, like, it might not fix the situation by any means, but, like, it will raise your mood, it will raise your endorphins?
Immediately what comes to mind is Let 'Em Say. It's Lizzo and Caroline Smith. It's the song's a few years old. I want to say it's 2017, 2018, but The lyrics are just, let them say what they're gonna say. I love it. And specifically, there's a bridge that's like, I want to be like my mama, 5'2" and a natural woman. As a shorty, I love that. It's just so, it makes me just feel so seen. I don't know.
Wait, how tall are you?
5'2".
Okay, okay. So you are really short. I love that.
Yeah, that's my one dating rule that I have. Just one, I don't date anyone over 6 foot. That's actually a turn off for me.
You are in the minority there, sweetie. So I love that.
Shorties come to me.
I love that. I love that. Okay, we love the short queens, the short kings. Amazing. Okay, question number 2. Somewhat similar, but when you're feeling down, I call this, you reach for your rejection rescue kit. What is an item that you reach for, or an activity that you do? What's something that you do to kind of like lift your spirit?
I love dancing. When I was a little kid, I used to sit in my room choreographing little dances to my stereo, and that's something in the last year that I'm like, actually, I love dancing. I didn't realize that twirling is a form of stimming. I was like, oh, I don't stim. I twirl constantly. I make myself dizzy, and honestly, half the time I end up laughing. Like, it's such a good recipe to like snap out of it. If I'm really worked up, I'll do that, and some journaling, and like ebb and flow between getting the words out really helps.
I absolutely adore that. I don't know if you watch Grey's Anatomy or not, but they always dance it out when they're stressed. That's like a thing. Mm-hmm. And so I personally like relate it to that, but I think that's really really great. I grew up as a dancer and always felt like going to dance class is where I like was able to feel my teenage angst the most. So
I love that.
I definitely think that moving your body like that and feeling it is so powerful. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing. Question number 3. What is the last thing that you did scared?
I had a confrontation with a friend who hadn't been treating me well, and I was able to hold multiple truths in that A, I was hurt, but could understand why she reacted the way she did. And even though I was feeling hurt, still being able to put down a boundary and say, the way you treated me doesn't work for me, and this isn't the type of relationship I want to have with a close friend.
Good for you. That's really hard. Sometimes I think like friend confrontations are more complicated than relationship ones.
When this happened, literally I went into breakup mode. Like, I was so upset, and I was like, am I overreacting? Am I like doing too much? And then I was like, you know what? I need this. I'm emotionally having feelings that are very similar to my breakup. Like, let me just take care of myself. Why am I going to criticize myself for having needs?
You deserve to have needs. We all have needs. 100%. I do think friend breakups are a thing. So going into breakup mode is like completely reasonable, I feel like, in so many ways. And I'm really big right now into reciprocal relationships. Because I feel like that's something that I have been really, really negligent for myself in the last like several years. Honestly, throughout my life. But like, it's something I've really noticed, like, as I've become an adult and everything, that I still reach for these people that don't give me anything in return, in friendships as well. And so I'm just like, no, we're going to stop that. And I've kind of cut off a lot of people this year because of that. So it's hard. It's tough.
You know, it's so funny you said that. I've probably had the most friend breakups this year. And I'm like, am I this like volatile person? And therapy was like, am I just cutting everyone off? My therapist was like, no, you understand your values and boundaries a lot better. And so where you had no boundaries before, where these people took and took and took, you're now putting up boundaries, and they're having the reactions they're having. And so in some ways it feels more volatile, but it's only because you're putting down boundaries where there weren't before.
And that is the nugget of wisdom. That is the key right there. Wow. My final question for you today is, for the listeners, after everything we've discussed, what is like one final nugget of wisdom, piece of advice that you would like to leave everybody with today?
If something is requiring you to self-sacrifice, it is too expensive. And I don't mean that in the way of like, you know, giving your time to someone, but if someone is asking you to sacrifice core parts of who you are, making you suppress them, making you feel embarrassed or that like you're unworthy, it's not for you.
It's not for you. That was beautiful. You said that so succinctly, so beautifully. Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on Access Denied. Where can everybody find you?
Thank you so much for having me. I am Liberal Jane across platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, X, Blue Sky. And yeah, follow along. I also have a sticker club. If anyone's a big sticker fan, wants monthly mail, you can sign up for that on my Patreon.
Ah, wait, I love that. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You've been such a delight to chat with, and you've given me a lot to think about. I hope our listeners feel the same. Everybody that's listening, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back next week. Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. And that concludes another episode of Access Denied. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you like this week's episode, be sure to hit that subscription button and notification bell here on YouTube, or go check us out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss another episode. We have so much exciting content coming out for season 2. You're not going to want to miss it. I'd like to give a huge shout out to JP Warner Sound for dropping this sick beat that you're listening to right now. And finally, if you'd like to rep your love of Access Denied, you now can with our very exciting merch line, featuring a very special Access Denied mug so that you can sip your morning tea while you listen to me spill the accessibility. Anyways, friends, thank you so much once again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Okay, did it stop? Yes, okay.